Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Summoning Insight. I did some experimenting last week that some of you may have noticed without announcing it, which was that we were splitting the guests into two separate YouTube VODs. If you were confused by that, I think the feedback we got was that it's a little bit easier to find exactly what you guys want to watch. We left the Twitch VOD as the entire episode. If you still want to watch it in one go, there's always that option. So you guys have live Twitch experience, Twitch VOD, YouTube VODs, podcast still that you can look at, many different ways to consume the exact same content. And also we were doing the YouTube premieres, so you would know when the episodes were coming out on YouTube. So all of that said, I think we'll try keep this experiment going for a little bit. If you guys have strong opinions, you can tweet at me and Thorin. But beyond that, really boring shit. Let's talk about the Worlds announcement, Thorin, because it has been revealed that the League of Legends World Championship will, in fact, be happening in China, starting at the end of September and going until Halloween, when the World Finals will be. I was a bit surprised by this. Not the fact that it's happening, but the fact that it is still happening in China. Do you have any thoughts?
I'm amazed that that isn't the central part of the discussion. Like, all I've seen from all the discussion online is basically just like, oh, wow, cool, Worlds is happening. Oh, and they've got a bubble. And then they just like leave. It's like they go through those facts, like Worlds is happening, there's a bubble, and it's in, never mind where it is. It's happening. That's all that matters. Because I have to say, Monty, without getting too deep, because this isn't really a topic we're going to explore in this angle very deep, I don't believe a single news story that comes out about China on any level, on any area of the world for the last, say, 10 years, mate. So the idea that if we accept the premise that this is a really, really serious situation, the idea we're going to send all the best players in the world to China this year to all stay in one place, to me, is madness. That's just madness on the surface.
Well, and I understand what Riot and Tencent wants, because it's Tencent making this decision, I presume.
Would make sense.
Is that, you want to have your 10-year anniversary in China, the biggest League of Legends region with all this pomp. And that was the plan. And I totally get that, because will you get the most people in China to attend these events? Absolutely you will. It will be the biggest spectacle, right? You have a lot of control there because Tencent is such a big company as to the venues you can get, the resources that you have access to. So I totally get that. And I understand that why they're doing it in China next year, because, okay, you can't have the audiences this year, so push it back a year. But what surprises me is, if you want to do it in Asia, why not just do it in Korea this year? Because the thing about Korea right now, for people who don't know, is that the whole country is basically a bubble. When you go in, you have to stay in a hotel room that's run by the government if you're a foreigner for 2 weeks before you can even enter the country. So as a matter of fact, right now, KBO, the Korean baseball organization, has now returned fans to be able to see games because everything has been so contained within Korea. So I was really surprised that they wouldn't just send the players there, quarantine them for 2 weeks, and then you could have potentially live audiences, because they've already started doing that at sporting events in Korea. And, they've said that, at least for this finals...
People want to know about that, by the way. If they want to know about the situation in Korea, a good spot to go and find out would be, I know on Tasteless podcast, he had Wolf and... I can't remember if it was Wolf and Brendan Valdez or something. He had Wolf and someone else. And they basically talk about, Wolf came back to Korea during all of this and went through the quarantine process. So they can actually get a lot of info there if you're interested in it.
Yeah, so I was just surprised that, given the variables involved in this, the unknown variables, that Korea, it just has everything locked down right now. And if you wanted to do it in an Asian time zone that would be friendly to a Chinese audience, I was just a little surprised they didn't just make the decision to move it to Korea, just given the pandemic situation and the fact that you're probably not going to be able to really enjoy the big audience aspect of it in China this year as it is. So it would make sense to move it. But it's also interesting to me that they want to have the first event in this new soccer stadium in Shanghai, because they announced that the new Pudong soccer stadium was going to be the venue for the finals, with or without a live audience, right? So it seems like, the Chinese government is really on board in terms of, christening these new facilities and making a big public spectacle about the whole thing. And I'm sure they're cool augmented reality stuff, right? It always is excellent at that. But yeah, I was just surprised that China was the choice when they...
I'm just amazed there's, like I say, there wasn't much even discussion about the location. Seems like people are just willing to accept wherever it is. Cool. Because if people don't know, by the way, if you're a very, very just person who doesn't look into any of these topics, it might sound weird because you'd think to yourself, I've been told, isn't America supposed to be locked in a trade war with China? Well, surely they would report if there was anything going on there. That's the part where the circuit breaks, unfortunately. You don't get honest reporting about China right now. Like, there is actually an amazing lack of critical journalism about China in the Western media, particularly in the USA, in part due to political concerns. And also, they literally just have ownership of some of the companies, or the company wants to, like Riot, if they weren't owned by Tencent, do business with Chinese companies in the future. So just basically, I don't claim to know what the situation is, but I'm just saying, like, I put it this way, it hasn't allayed my concerns about what could be going on, anything in the last few months. Nothing really has come out to make it seem like, as we're saying, if you were picking a spot, that would be the most safe to do. China wouldn't be on my short list, but that way.
Well, it's also that they're doing it in China 2 years in a row, right? So it's like, oh no, we're doing it.
I sort of get that angle though, because like the thing is, they had it in the US so many years, and now like they've won worlds twice, like in most of the competitions. So if you want to go with that angle, I think it's fair. Like I think it's actually bullshit how few times it's ever even been in Korea, for example. Like the idea is in the US half the time. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Well, it's been in, to be very clear, it has been in Korea exactly once, because the other time it was, quote, in Korea.
That doesn't even count.
It was half in Taiwan and half in Singapore. Exactly. So it was in like
some of the groups
and Southeast Asia.
Not even in Korea. I think it was only the playoffs was in Korea, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, none of the group stages were in Korea. So yeah, it is weird, but like I said, I get the Asian time zone thing, which is why I would have thought Korea would have been the choice for this, because at least you still get in that same time zone, but you can actually have it entirely within Korea and just, change it out later. The year Korea is supposed to have it in a couple years or whatever, change that out and then just have the big spectacle next year in China. But, there's a lot that goes into this. Could be that the venues, couldn't be booked on this short notice because we're 6-7 weeks out.
Booked in the past, yes, you'd have to waste your deposit and maybe lose it. So there's a lot of financial reasons you'd keep it doing the way it was planned originally, I assume.
Yeah, so I mean, I get why it's in Asia, like you're saying, but I'm just surprised it's in China, and I'm surprised they're doing it 2 years in a row in China. It does make it particularly hard, I think, for North American viewership because of the time zone. That the Asian time zone is the absolute worst.
Yeah, so that's fucking rich, isn't it? Americans complaining about other people having to have bad time zones. A little spoiler, because I've said this in the past, but everyone just ignores it. The only reason LEC was ever behind NA is because it was the fucking redheaded stepchild to the NA broadcast. If they'd have actually made those competing broadcasts from day one, I bet it would have taken like 1 year or something for Europe to overtake.
Well, I mean, it's also true that there's more players within Europe and Asia. So this is probably the best time zone because it's going to be on in the morning in Europe in terms of pure viewership, right? Also because objectively, European teams are much more likely to go deep in the world's bracket and generate more viewership in a time zone that's friendly for those viewers, right? So it is definitely the best time for overall viewership is to host it in Asia, quite clearly. So that's obviously another concern. Yeah, and I think also when it comes to hosting it in Asia again, if we're looking at potential media rights deals that are coming up for Riot at the end of this year, very interesting to think about them wanting to maximize their viewership right now, right? In terms of how can they get the largest rights deal across many different countries to potentially sell that broadcast, because that's going to be in the cards, guys. Like with the amount of money that's being thrown around, we've seen how much YouTube is willing to pay for Activision Blizzard titles, exclusivity in esports. I think Riot would be foolish to turn down that much potential money when it comes to funding their own esports experience. So I think that's definitely going to be in the cards too. So maximizing viewership does make a lot of sense. Any other thoughts on the world situation?
I mean, if it just happens and it's offline, it'll be cool. I mean, I was kind of settled in just like in CSGO, where, I mean, in theory, they're still going to have the major in CSGO. It's supposed to be around the same time it's planned for once it got rebooked. But I personally don't think it'll happen. So I've actually assumed the same thing will happen with Worlds. So if it actually happens and it's offline, at least we get a cool tournament to end the year.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that's one of the benefits is it looks like they are trying to create some sort of NBA-like bubble system within China. As long as we have a LAN for Worlds, it will actually be the first, legitimate result that we've had this year because all of our playoffs for spring were online. We didn't have MSI. Looks like for, summer playoffs are also going to be online. So at least we have some level of legitimate results for the year 2020 in League of Legends because I don't really give a fuck what you guys think, but it's, LAN is the only real result, right? Any online result always carries some sort of caveat because it's not the same kind of situation. Ping gets involved. The players aren't in the same mental state. There is always the possibility of cheating that you have to take into account. So we really,
crowd, et cetera.
Yeah, the crowd,
a million factors.
Yeah, so there's so many factors that it really does delegitimize, unfortunately, most of the esports results that we've had in 2020 so far. And we've chatted a little bit about this before, but one of the things, and I'm not saying I have insider knowledge because I don't, but one of the things is like this is probably the most rampant time for actual cheating within esports history. And I'm not talking about necessarily aim bots or things that you can detect, but we don't know, for example, if coaches are on comms in a lot of these games. We don't know how the information is being routed or the way that people are engaging in these online matches that they couldn't normally engage in when it comes to LAN events.
Put it this way, like obviously in League of Legends, there's a lot of UI elements. I mean, this doesn't matter. But if this was a game like in the old school versions of like Dota and stuff, I mean, the number one cheating thing would just be timing everything, wouldn't it? And having the coach behind you with like a notepad, like, right, it's coming up in this time. That doesn't really matter in League, luckily, because the UI takes care of that now because they've noobified the game so much. But I would assume, like you say, we're not talking about like literally using like an aimbot to mechanically execute stuff, but there's a lot of things that you just wouldn't be able to do in the booth that you could. Like, for example, people don't ever discuss this, Monty, but we discuss it in CSGO because we used to actually have it. If people don't know, it used to be allowed for like a year or so in CSGO for the coach to be on comms, and if he wanted to actually shot call the game. So there was actually teams, the most famous one was Na'Vi, where their in-game leader wasn't actually in the game. It was the coach, but he used to be an in-game leader, like in terms of skills. And so he was doing a great job doing it. Now, in League of Legends, no one discusses this, Monty, but I guess Riot, in theory, would keep you off the actual team speak. Like they'd check maybe you're not in there with an admin or something. But you can't know if the guy's behind you. Like, How can we know what those guys are saying?
It's also
it would be very easy to have a setup where your coach just macros the game for you.
It's not even that. Like you could have, and they do have refs within the TeamSpeak or the Discord servers where the teams are communicating. But guess what? You can just set up a different call that has the coach and everyone else in it.
Hand signals or something. There's a million ways you can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Come on, guys. There's no way to actually police this unless you're in the room with them. And I'm not saying that any team is doing this because I have no idea.
We just can't know they aren't.
We just can't know they aren't. So we can't treat these results with the same seriousness is the point. That's all. But yeah,
I always thought that's why I brought that topic up. I always thought to myself, like, if you'd have actually had that in League of Legends where the coach could just talk and shot call the game, the game would be completely different. Like the actual level of macro you'd hope would be like twice as good in the game.
Yeah, I mean, you would definitely hope that, and I think that it's not a knock against Riot or any of the TOs that are operating within this scene, but it is just a fact of the matter that you can only do so much if you're not actually monitoring the players on site. And if you look at the way that organizations like Riot and like Blizzard, so both Riot and Blizzard do the same thing when it comes to gaming peripherals, which is that you have to send them from the factory provider. So Logitech has to send like a keyboard to the LCS or to the Overwatch League, factory sealed, and it gets locked into a crate or a locker for that team, and then all of it's handled by the refs, so you can't have any kind of onboard memory carrying hacks or anything like that into the game. Well, that's out the window right now too, because there's no ref going into the team houses and distributing peripherals or making sure that these tools aren't being used. So what is normally, I would say, a very good secure system that is operated by some of these leagues, well, that's gone now. So it is a bit of a rough situation when it comes to those online results for that reason. Okay, how about we take a little break, and when we come back on, we'll get Damonte from the Golden Guardians in the show. All right. Our first guest this week is going to be Damonte, newly of the Golden Guardians, thanks to the change before the summer split occurred. And I guess we should start there, because it was very weird to see you not on an LCS team at the beginning of this year. And from my conversations with various teams and various people, which I was very surprised by this response, was basically the thought that after last year, everyone knew your ceiling. And so the better thing to do was to get an import mid laner or to try out some kind of untested person, because they thought that you had kind of reached the apex of your play. And so many teams said that they'd rather roll the dice on someone else. When I asked, like, well, why aren't you guys getting Damonte? What was your experience like during the offseason and that process? Because for a guy who went to Worlds and was clearly one of the best native mid laners in America, it was a little bit weird that you wouldn't be one of the hot free agents on the market, given how teams are constructed.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely interesting. I definitely didn't expect to get back from Worlds and like struggle finding a team. I mean, honestly, if anything, I just expected to start for Dignitas like for the rest of the year, because that was what my contract had in it. It wasn't over until the end of 2020, so I wasn't really expecting not to be on Dignitas in the first place. And then once Dignitas did end up dropping me, I basically didn't have many options in LCS at all, and then I was just weighing a bunch of academy options against each other, and that's where I ended up. And it was like, okay, it's kind of weird.
Do you think that people, because I mean, like we said, you went to Worlds. Like, do you think that people just looked at the Clutch team and just gave all the credit to like the big, like, did like Huni get all the credit that you should have gotten, etc., for example?
I mean, I think Huni definitely got a lot of credit, but I don't think it's not like he didn't deserve it. He definitely did a lot for the team, but I feel like a lot of people just think it was like Huni only that did all the work, when I feel like, I mean, our bot lane did a lot. Cody-san and Vulcan were insane. I feel like Lyra did a lot. I feel like I did a lot. But like Huni was like the superstar of the team, so it kind of went to him for sure.
I was also surprised that Lyra was the other one who was kind of dropped out of the conversation when it came to signing players, because he had his up and down time, but there was a time in NA when he was on Envy where he was legitimately in discussion for MVP of the league, and I think he had a strong, overall, if we consider the entire time on Clutch that he was a strong performer, and it still is surprising to me that he hasn't been picked up by a team in a major region.
Yeah, I feel like Lyra taught like our team a lot of stuff. I feel like he like taught our team how to actually like play for the jungler, which was like a big thing for us with getting actually good, because before we just expected Lyra to basically like help our lanes, and we didn't really help him. And then basically we fell into some meta at like the end of the summer split where he was playing a lot of level 6 junglers, and we just wouldn't ask for help at all until he's level 6, and then he would just outlevel every jungler in NA, because I feel like it's really common in NA for the laners to like pull around their jungler, and then Lyra would just like outlevel everyone just because we didn't use him, and then that's like how we would get early game leads a lot.
Right, when you actually found out that you weren't going to be a starter, like obviously initially you had to go to the academy, even though you did, like I told you like privately, like you did the right thing, like doing like public, like, because basically what you said publicly was like, like I'll take this as like a lesson, I'll fight my way back, I'll prove I deserve to be in the LCS, as opposed to the obvious route you could have gone and just be salty and just be like, what the fuck, like I should have a spot. But inside though, like without naming names, you must have thought you were better than some of the people who made it in LCS this, like at the beginning of the year especially.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I was better than like 4 or 5 of the mid laners. And I mean, on like the salty part of the like writing like a twit longer or something, like I saw like Pobelter's twit longer when he didn't get a team. I feel like it just makes you look like pretty dumb. Just like you're like trying to prove to people that you're not bad or something, when like you don't have to do that. You can just play the game and people can judge for themselves.
It's hard when you're not given the opportunity to play at the top level, though, that you could prove that to people, right? So what was your path to do that proof, really?
I mean, for me, I didn't really want to like sit out a split. But this is my first time ever like experiencing anything like this. Like maybe in the future I would do it differently and I would actually sit out a split. But for me, I just thought I might as well just go to academy and do my best and like try to look insane. And I mean, that's basically what I thought I did. I just like went to academy, felt like I was the best mid by far, and was just kind of hoping I would get a team. There was like no guarantee basically. So yeah, I just kind of went for the working route.
What was the process then of getting onto Golden Guardians? How did that opportunity come about, and what was there tryouts or what actually went down?
So like the beginning of the summer split, I was still like signed to Dignitas Academy, and like the Dignitas team had a 10-man tryout. It was an 11-man tryout technically. So what they did, they had like all 11 players, and there were 2 people in every role except for mid lane. And then in mid lane, it was me, Phoenix, and Froggen. And there was like a week-long tryout period, and like 3 days into the tryout, they basically just sat me down in some meeting, and they were just like, "Hey man, we're not like interested in using you for the summer split at all, and they're gonna let me." Like they'll let me talk to other teams, and I was like, okay, like I didn't really know what to say because I thought I was playing like decently in the tryouts, but luckily as soon as that happened, there was like a week and a half until the first LCS game, and Golden Guardians was also doing some tryout period between Goldenglue and a Blaze Olive, and then I basically as soon as like the day after I got dropped, or not dropped from Dignitas, but they told me I wouldn't be starting, I talked to the Golden Guardians, and then I got 2 scrim days with them. So I split a scrim day with a Blaze Olive on both of the days, because by the time I got to Golden Guardians, I think Golden Glue already was not starting. It was going to be a Blaze Olive 100%, and then they basically put me against a Blaze Olive for like 2 or 3 scrim days, and I played pretty well, and then I just joined the Golden Guardians.
So originally, actually, Phoenix was trying out for mid, and then he just ended up AD in the academy team, and then eventually got back to mid.
Yeah, the off season before spring, I don't really know exactly what happened, but either way, I was signed to Dignitas, and then there was also Phoenix and Froggen signed to Dignitas, and so there was just like 3 mid laners on Dignitas, and we weren't really sure what was gonna happen. There was like talks of like either me or Phoenix both going to AD, and like that wasn't really something I was too fond of. I didn't really want to go to AD after I feel like I just like learned a lot going to Worlds, and I was playing really well. So I was like, why would I give up playing mid lane now? And then one way or another, I guess they just got Phoenix to play AD. And I mean, to be honest, I think Phoenix is insane at AD, but that's another story.
Would you like to tell it?
I mean, I guess, yeah.
That's what the show is for, after all.
Yeah. Okay, so like Phoenix as a mid laner, I feel like this guy has like so many. He has like so many strengths, but he also has so many weaknesses. And one of his weaknesses is like actually, like being smart at the game, kind of like not flaming Phoenix or anything, but like he dies against a lot. He doesn't really like think about the big picture enough, I feel. But he has like all of the talent for winning his lane individually, and for team fighting, and for doing all this like just like individual stuff. And then when he was on ADC, when I played with him on Dignitas Academy, it was really nice because I feel like he was playing with Ole then. Ole kind of just like directed him what to do a lot of the time. And then he was just this robot that kind of played team fights well and laned well. And that's like what I feel is perfect in ADC for the most part. I feel like he shouldn't have changed. It was like long story short.
What would you have, I mean, but at the same time right now, I mean, Johnson, I think, had a pretty good rookie year. Playing for Dignitas. So would Phoenix really be an upgrade, do you think, over Johnson? If there was a theoretical Dignitas roster that now contained you in the mid lane and Phoenix at AD carry, better or worse than current Dignitas?
I think it would be better, if I'm being honest. I think like when I was playing with Phoenix, it just felt like we were on the same page a lot because he was a mid laner as well. So whenever we like were team fighting, we kind of knew what each other wanted to do. Also, it's kind of nice having like another mid laner on the team just to talk to him about stuff. It's kind of like what Golden Guardians have right now. I talk to Huni a lot about just mid lane stuff that he even knows, and it's kind of interesting to like have that dynamic where we played each other's roles.
I would think who he would hate that. I mean, he doesn't even get to play the role anymore. That's like your ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend is talking like, did she used to do this stuff when I was with her? Like, fucking hell, mate. It's too much information. Just keep some distance, you know.
But enough about the conversations at TSM. But enough about the conversations at TSM. Anyway.
Hey, listen, at least TSM's fucking other people now, as we'll talk about. Nice little win streak. Not bad. Turns out, now after they finished infighting, they're actually one of the best team fighting teams now, Monty. It's actually all worked out. It was all training. It's all training the whole time. What Reggie did was put training weights on the whole organization. And if they could overcome his incompetence, his staggering incompetence, then that would mean that when they came to normal Earth gravity, they were incredible.
It's working. I'm sure we'll talk about TSM's recent performance. It sure seems to have improved the roster.
Teaser for everyone.
So yeah, and now that you've moved into Golden Guardians, what was interesting to me is you guys started out Summer Split pretty slow. You started out 1-4, and ever since that point in time, you guys have gone what? 8-3? Yeah, 8-3. So it's been a really big turnaround since a slow start to the season. And also,
and some of those losses were wacky losses as well. Like they actually have had an insane split after the initial period. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting too because you as a player individually have kind of shifted your style. It looks like to suit the roster, and so much of it right now is around this jungle meta enabling Closer. Closer is certainly in conversation as one of the top junglers in the league, so it really does make sense, right? But if we look at your hero pool or your champion pool, it's been 5 games of Twisted Fate, 3 games of Galio, 2 of Lissandra, 2 of Zoe. So this has been the overwhelming amount of your champion pool, and these are all mid laners that are going to be very roam heavy or poke heavy and trying to enable the rest of your team. So how would you describe, first off, let's start with the slow start. What was it like kind of integrating yourself into the team, and what were some of the issues you guys had early on in the split?
Well, I'd say when I first joined the team, it was really late. So basically when I was like the full-on mid laner, when I knew that I'd be starting week 1, we only had I think like 5 days of practice until the first LCS games. So we definitely did not have as much time as like the other teams. And I think what came with that was like instantly we found a ton of success like playing through mid jungle like early game and getting leads like that way. And I think you'll see in like a lot of our first games, we were winning the game early, but we kind of just had no idea how to transition it into mid or late game or kind of like spread our lead elsewhere fast enough. And I feel like that's like why we dropped a lot of games is because we just didn't know what to do. Like we just had really bad macro and we didn't know how to actually make the rest of the map win after mid jungle 1. And now that we're kind of like 2.5 months into practicing with each other, I feel like we're understanding the concept more of actually helping each other and like being a real team. And I feel like that's like the biggest shift since the early weeks. What
about thoughts on Closer this split?
I think Closer is like one of probably the best jungler I've played with. I think he has some holes in his play where it reminds me of kind of when I played with Dardoch, where he's just so insanely good at the game. But sometimes when things don't go his way, he will like tilt a little bit. But when he actually does get what he wants and like is ahead in the game and he knows he's like stronger than enemy jungler, he takes over games like no other player I've ever seen. And that's kind of like why I think my champion pool is the way it is this split. I feel like a lot of the champions that I pick are to enable him. Kind of like I want to just go first for him. That way it's like it's a lot easier to play jungle if your mid laner is going first for you all the time, because usually it's the opposite way around, where like the jungler is gonna play Trundle and then your mid laner plays Azir or something. But like for us, like I'll play Jace and he'll play Nidalee, or I'll play Twisted Fate and he'll play like Set or something, and I'm gonna be the one going first for him, which just like enables him a lot. And I feel like he really thrives with playing with like a mid laner like that.
There's a stat for you, Monty.
Oh.
Closer has played 0 games of Trundle this split. Because he's an actual man. This guy, he understands. Like, he's the guy where, you know, when you're playing a solo queue game and you're at that point in the game where it's like, nah, the enemy team's getting pretty strong, I should probably build defensive items. But then there's that little thought in the back of your mind that goes, or build more damage and kill them before they can kill you. He just only has that thought in the back of his mind. That is just his central consciousness. There's no like Cambrian mind split or whatever. Like, he's fully in that world. I mean, this guy's a dude, isn't he? He's had some mad carry games this split.
I think he is truly, I mean, if you look at the scouting that went on for this guy coming out of the Turkish league, really big props to Golden Guardians for using an import slot on this guy, because I think that is often something that's overlooked. And let's talk about Golden Guardians, just the import slots in general. FBI looking pretty good, honestly, coming in. Is he a world beater AD carry? No, but I mean, he's probably in the 4 to 6 range of 80 carries in terms of rankings right now within the league, which for an Australian player is very respectable coming into their first real year in the LCS. And then you have this guy coming in from Turkey. So Golden Guardians, they weren't going the traditional route of, hey, let's scout from Europe or let's scout from Korea. And instead they're taking a look at these minor regions and saying, are there some really big fish in these small ponds that if we bring them into the LCS, we can make them a lot better or make them dominant stars within the regions. And I think Closer is certainly in conversation, like I said, for top 2 jungler. I would say he's either this split, I would say he might be number 1, but this year I would say he's number 2 overall in the LCS.
To be fair, if they win a couple more games, I think he should be an MVP candidate.
Yes. Yeah, I think especially
would be unreasonable,
especially because of the momentum later in the season. Like Damonte is saying, they didn't have, their early stutters were either games that they could have won. Like a lot of, I think the issues you guys had early in the split was that Closer was having some really good games individually on Nidalee, but you guys were very bad at following up on his Nidalee plays. But that's to be expected when you don't have the same level of synergy from your very short amount of time with the team.
Yeah, I feel like definitely. I mean, also Nidalee is just like a weird champion to end the game with because most teams like are used to having CC. So like, we didn't really know what to do without CC, but definitely now that like we're more in tune with our drafts too. We're gonna get CC somewhere, and not just having a Nidalee with no CC on our team or something. It makes the game easier as well.
Do you guys feel that you are somewhat limited in terms of your style, though, given what you've seen so far, what you've performed so far? Obviously you came off a big win against Cloud9 this last week, which we'll talk about, which shows that you have this style down, but you do kind of tend to play one way around Closer and kind of being very rotation focused and objective focused in your gameplay.
I think it could be an issue if the meta shifts like super hard, but I think the meta right now is not even really favoring the insanely supportive mids right now. I feel like you see kind of worldwide that a lot of mid laners are picking up just control mages constantly, and that's not something that we can't do or anything, but it's something that we are doing more now because of the bans of the enemy team. Like no one's really letting us play Galio anymore. No one really lets us play Twisted Fate anymore. Like we got it in our game yesterday.
I was gonna say CLG let you do that.
Yeah, we got it in our game yesterday, but like Cloud9 banned it against us too, and it's just like I feel like if the team scouted us properly, we're probably not going to always be able to play that playstyle. So it's something that we definitely have to like shift away from too a little bit.
Going back to the Cloud9 game, Cloud9 clearly on a bit of a slump right now. I think we can say that definitively after an 0-2 week in which they played a lot of their comfort picks and they weren't trying any new styles or any kind of new strategies like we saw with the Lux Sona or the Wukong Senna or any of that. You guys kind of just beat them straight up. And this was your first Syndra game of the year.
Yeah.
What was it like? Why did you guys choose to go to Syndra? I know obviously a lot of the bans that came through were targeted directly at you and this playstyle, but you were still able to make a lot of plays with Teleport Syndra to the same kind of stylistic effect that you would use on a Twisted Fate or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the game was interesting because I feel like when we play against C9, their playstyle kind of mirrors ours a bit. Like we are kind of similar teams, and when we were in the middle of the game, it felt a little weird because I mean C9 picked Trundle. I feel like Blabber is kind of like closer where like they just should not pick him Trundle. I feel because as soon as you pick Trundle, you're not really gonna win mid 2v2. And then in that game, we kind of just like stomped their mid jungle because we like I don't know, we just had better, like Syndra and Volibear just have a lot more 2v2 potential than like Trundle and Zoe. And we kind of just like rolled over their 2v2 mid, and then I feel like when C9's mid jungle don't actually like have prow or anything, they kind of fall apart as a team almost. Because I feel like Licorice is really used to playing aggressive, and then their bot lane is really used to getting timers from their team in order to like actually play their lane better.
You made the game-winning play effectively of that game because everything was super close. Cloud9 actually had a small lead for a while, and it was you backing and then TPing in onto the dragon fight with Syndra that allowed you to then take the Baron and really accrue a gold lead that was not going to be possible for C9 to come back from ultimately. Are you a big voice when it comes to shot calling on this team? Was that your idea? Because it was absolutely the right move in that scenario.
Yeah, I would say so. I feel like I kind of lead the team a bit in the shot calling. It's something like all five of us do a lot of the work, but I feel like for me, I kind of have been trying to be the person on the team who tells everyone like everything's okay, or like to slow down, or just like that's enough. Just like kind of limiting us because we tend to go like we like over chase, or like we do everything too much, if that makes sense. Like we overextend a lot, or we just like we will make a good play and then we keep trying to make a play, and that's like it like ends up being bad for us in the end. And I feel like I've been trying to like dial the team back and like being like, okay guys, we got one kill, like Nash is free, or like Dragon is free, or like just take the tower and base, instead of like we have to take everything, and then like we have to take more after that too.
One thing I want to ask you about, actually, since your team was one of the ones that were thought to be one of the worst teams, but now had this epic run and won all these games, probably going to be a playoff team. I mean, it's NA, so actually definitely going to be a playoff team, let's be real. I was thinking it was the old days where it used to be hard to make playoffs. No, the question I have is this, is what do you think about the current meta in the game? Because I have to say, one thing I find a bit underwhelming, while it's producing good matches, like entertaining matches, it feels as though every team sort of understands how you win at most points of the game. Like there's not a massive amount of options to what to do. It's fairly like there's almost like you could make someone a flow chart of like, if you've done this, go and do that. And so if you get the lead, the other team can still win the game, but it's almost like you can somewhat autopilot the wins. What do you think on this? Because it seems like there's a lot of parity in the Western regions right now in every level.
Yeah, I feel like there's just like a lot of team fighting comps right now. There's like a lot of ADCs who do a lot of damage, but they have no mobility. And then I feel like that creates a lot of just straight up 5v5 ball comps. Like you're even seeing like the top laners are picking Malphite now, and that was like never a thing for a long time. But now everyone's like Malphite's OP because all the ADCs don't move.
Which is fucking wild, by the way, because the reason why Malphite was never played at the professional level is because he's an extremely binary champ, where it's like, does he have ult? Yes, no, is the only question that you need to know about him in the late game, right? But the thing is, like you're saying, if an AD carry flashes down, it's now like, does Malphite have ult? Yes, no. Does enemy AD carry have flash? Yes, no. And then that's how you set your engage parameters. It's like, it's actually sad because it's so stupid. Like it's not even nuanced. It's not complicated.
No, but that's why, dude. When we all used to complain, but we used to say colloquially, "Oh, season 2 was the best." We didn't mean literally. Like it is just season 2 again. Like all these mad OP AD carries, and then the Malphite just kills any of them that are available. Of course, that's what he used to do in season 2 as well. Did I lag? I think he's lagged.
He's lagged.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Back.
I'm back. No, yeah, it's so funny. The meta is hilarious. It literally exactly what you said. Before every objective, we're just like, guys, did their ADC or mid laner have flash? And then we'd fight entirely based on that. Even like the other top laners, it's like Kennen and who else? Orianna is played all the time. Just these champions that require the enemies not to have flash if you want to just stomp a fight.
I do find it. Let me change this. At the start of this year, at the start of 2020, I was very entertained by this meta, and I felt that there was a lot of room to kind of have different strategies, but the longer it goes on, and I think we can see this in the way that EG swapped out their team, because before it was Jizuke dominating and then going to split push, but I think we've seen split push as a concept get worse and worse and worse as the year goes on.
I don't think it's a coincidence that an LEC OG also fell off a cliff and are not relevant now. Like there's the other split push team, mate.
And I think like split pushing in general, when you have all these fights around Dragon Soul, has become significantly weaker as a concept and a strategy, as teams have refined the way in which they can get early dragons and accelerate the pace of the game, or threaten for significant periods of time a snowball based off of the soul. Because the early you get those 3 stacks, well then for the rest of the game, while the enemy team's trying to split pushing, every 5 minutes here comes another attempt at a dragon soul that they have to fight, or they have to get some skirmish where they get a kill. And it's insanely hard to continuously do that as a split pushing team. Basically the team you're playing against has to make some sort of unforced error to commit to a skirmish, instead of just sitting passively under a turret farming and waiting for the next chance at a soul point where they have the more powerful team fight.
Yeah, it's really strange because now the split pushing team almost needs a win condition of getting a dragon or 2 early in order to stall the game like 5 to 10 more minutes.
Yeah, it especially when a lot of these split pushing champions do not have powerful wave clear in the early game. How do you even create the pressure in order to get that scenario, right?
Also, I feel like we need to change the terminology, because about Monty, how a few years back people started trying to change the terminology from like early, mid to late game, because in the old school terminology, when we said late game, we usually meant like 35 minutes to 50 minutes or something, whereas in the modern day, like late game is basically like 23 minutes on in the game or something like. So I feel like now, with how much the game can be accelerated early, like the concepts of scaling and late game need to be like readjusted. Because
Yes.
what a scaling comp is now is totally different. Like you can't do the really old school scaling comps. You never get it online. Like what people call scaling now is almost like hybrid scaling. You have to still be able to win the game the normal way as well. Like I feel like these tournaments are too vague because they're what we used to mean years ago, but they don't really apply now.
I totally agree because scaling now means 2 items. It's like 2 items is late game. Like, are you at 21 minutes and you have the 2 items that you need on Kalista? Like,
by the way, there's another reason why I don't want to hear AD carries complain too much, where they're like, we can't even win the team fight at 20 minutes with 2 items. Like, what are you talking about? Like, dude, what, do you want to just be OP for 1v9 from minute 1? Like, if you listen, AD carries, if you hear what I said, we're not even at the late game yet in the old sense. Like, obviously you shouldn't be 1v9. You're still pretty strong.
Damonte, how do you think we should discuss the game these days? Because I agree with Thorin that we kind of just have to throw out the old terminology completely because of how fast and accelerated the game has become.
I mean, I feel like it's super meta dependent on like how you're going to talk about the game. Because even at the beginning of this split, when everyone was just spamming Twisted Fate was like the only viable split pusher in the game for a while. So it was kind of fun to like wait to see like when Twisted Fate would like get his Lich Bane or get his Death Cap, because then you can like go in the side lane and stuff. But now it's like, does the Aphelios have his Runon's Hurricane and his Infinity Edge, or does the Ezreal have his Menemune and Triforce?
Yep.
And then after that, it's like all that you wait for next is the Death Stance item, and then as soon as you see Death Stance, everyone's just like, I don't really want to play the game anymore. ADC is just too OP.
Put it this way, all that needs to be said is this. Anyone who knows the history of me on talk shows and my opinions, all I'll say is this. This is how extreme the meta is right now. When EG made the move, before they even played their first games, when EG made the move that they were going to put Goldenglue in over Jizuke, I even said, I understand it. Like, there's a logic to it. I think it makes sense as a move. I think Jizuke is a way better mid laner than Goldenglue, but not in this meta. Like, actually, right now, listen, they haven't won many games, so to be fair, it's not like it was like a definite plus or minus either way, but I understand what they were going for. Like, it made logical sense.
I think it's hard for them, and I do want to discuss this because it completely changed their style. Like, it changed, it 180'd their style, basically. So I think it's hard for the rest of the team to adapt to that. And also, I was a little bit less enthusiastic because I had watched Huni play Academy games, and when I say he was straight inting, I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean, like, literally running into top lane and suiciding under a turret, like actual straight inting. So I was like, is this guy even, like, he looked like one of the worst tops in Academy at times. So I was seriously considering like what his current form was, and I was concerned about that. Now, has he played that way in the LCS? No. So I guess it was probably just he didn't care about being in Academy, which is reasonable, I suppose, if you're Huni. And I think for the most part, he's had some pretty solid performances so far. Won the Cloud9 game, had some good carry on Gangplank in that one, and has had some pretty solid carry performances overall. And I think, as you're saying, Thorin, it is definitely an upgrade right now for the way that the game should be played, even if in almost any other meta, I would think this transition would be crap. I think it's actually surprisingly a good choice right now.
I thought it was interesting because I was under the impression for the whole 2020 that Jizuke was like the second best mid laner after like Niski for the longest time. I thought every time I watched him play,
he looked good, yeah, for sure. He had great highlights.
Even like when I was playing versus him for the first half of the summer split, I thought like this guy was the only one who's actually punishing me or making me feel pressured in the game. And when I saw it get announced, it kind of made sense because Jizuke was definitely running down in like half of his games. But I also thought it was weird because I feel like he was the only reason they were winning a lot of the games. So it was just kind of like a weird situation.
I mean, they're another team where, like, the problem is Cloud9 and AG are the teams that are doing the worst at the moment. Like, they're both fucking terrible form. So, like, should we keep? Are we finished with EG? Should we go back to Cloud9? Because we haven't really talked more generally about Cloud9.
Let's talk about.
Because, like, as Monty said, 2 of the losses technically were when they were experimenting, and obviously they'd won one of the other games where they'd had the Wukong. So it's like that's not out of the world.
And also, the Luxona should have worked. They should have won that game
in theory, yeah. But the last 2 weeks though have been absolutely atrocious. And the worst thing is, when I watch the games, like, they're still in the games that they're losing. They're never getting stomped by anyone. It's not like they just got rolled at the beginning of the game and say, oh, well, nothing you can do. Like, they're always like the game against TSM, they're like right in the game. So what's weird is that it looks like their team fighting's gone to shit or something. Like, something looks just disconnected us. I mean, what do you think, Damonte? What's happened to Cloud9? And this, like, I heard even as recently as I think last week that they win like almost every scrim still to this day. So, like, is there something weird going on stage? What do you think? Well, not literally on stage, metaphorically.
I think we've had like 4 or 5 scrim days versus C9 the entire summer split. I legitimately think we're like 0-30 or something. So it was really funny to us when we actually won the stage game. They're definitely not a bad team by any means, but it definitely seems like something is just off with their like, I don't know, their synergy or something. I don't know if they're tilted because they lost last week or something, but it felt like they were not on the same page as they usually were. And there's like this thing whenever I watch C9 play, they just like they play really aggressively all the time.
Yes.
And
That's
even
the
when they're
problem.
not ahead or stronger than the enemies, they will just act like they are, and they just like they will just walk into the dragon area and walk into bushes and act like they're super strong. And I feel like most NALCS teams will just give their ground to C9 just because they act so confident. And I wasn't really feeling that in our game against them. It didn't seem like they were just like going in and like chatting out on us or something, or like acting like they were super strong. It seemed like they were timid and they didn't really think they were gonna win if they did that.
I mean, I sort of agree with that, but also I think that they had a lead, and that if anything, I think C9 has been forcing certain objectives when they don't have to, because the fight that we were discussing earlier, where you went with the recall and the teleport play back in at full HP to win and then chain into a Baron, it wasn't even sole point. Like it was the third dragon of the game, and they had 1,000 gold lead, I believe, at the time, and they could have absolutely just given that dragon up and just fought for Ocean Soul next time around, instead of trying to take a disastrous engagement that got you guys really nothing, just a third dragon, which is meaningless. It doesn't matter until number 4, right? And then given the opportunity for you guys to take Baron, it just seems like they're making very silly small mistakes, like not knowing that you had the TP at the time, or overvaluing that third point, that third dragon that you guys got. And I kind of have seen this over and over as they've played. It's a bunch of little errors. A lot of the time it's like playing poorly in lane and then losing summoner spells, right? We saw that from Cloud9 in their second match, I think, against TSM. When Cloud9's playing with a Kennen up against a set, you are really reliant on having the flash on the Kennen if you want to engage. Because if you don't have that flash, then set just ults you out. So if you're blowing...
By the way, that Kennen did nothing in any of those teams.
Because he didn't have flash.
He was on his own.
Yeah.
Just on his own, get his head smashed in, and then his teams walk away.
Yeah, but I mean, my point is, like, if you blow the flash in a foolish manner, or it's not there for a team fight, and you're playing against this set, there isn't really a great... It limits your options so much on the Kennen. And so I feel like a lot of the issues that Cloud9 has been having is that they are not taking a serious inventory of what they have going into a team fight. And I would argue that before they didn't have to do that because their core strength was being so aggressive early and having priority off of all these objectives that they could always fight. So they always knew to go in. And instead of taking a step back and saying right now, well, can we fight at this objective with this composition or with under these conditions with these summoner spells up? They're just ignoring that and continuing to go in regardless. And I think that as they decide to change their play style, what has to happen is you have to kind of reevaluate that every time before you take an engagement. And to me, that's the part that's missing with Cloud9 right now. And it's making them look bad. Yeah,
I've got a question for you. we need to pivot teams now. We talked about that. That's all right. What about this? Being as we made fun of them a few weeks back, Monty, when we did this show where it was like the week where they went 0-2 and the week before they'd gone 2-0 and we didn't talk about them because that was the week that we had off. TSM has won the last 4 games, including a massive one over C9. So let's talk about TSM. Like as I said, as I alluded to earlier, TSM's fighting looks really good now, actually. Yep. Their roster looks online. I mean, one thing I wanted to know was, like, I haven't paid individual attention to the support players. So do you think actually the support swap has helped them, Damonte, bringing in treats instead of Biofrost?
I played against Treats in Academy. I feel like he wasn't like a huge standout or anything to me. He just seemed like he was like a solid player. It didn't really look like he would be someone who wowed me or go into LCS or anything. But I feel like it definitely brought a breath of fresh air into the team. I don't know if something was like going on between Double and Bowfrost, but their bot lane definitely looked really weak, and maybe it brought back some like fire or something. But yeah, TSM has been looking pretty insane. I feel like Bjergsen is definitely back online. I feel like when I watch him play now, he's back to being like top 2, and he hasn't been top 2 in a long time, I feel. So it's pretty yeah, they just look scary. And also with Bjergsen playing Zillion again, it's like they're gonna get free bans all the time, unfortunately.
Well, it's also, I think that as of the last couple of weeks, that Bjergsen should probably be in the conversation for MVP of the split now, because he has been performing extremely well.
Already tied for second. Yeah. And actually, even as Damonte says, like, I don't think this year he was ever a top mid laner. So, like, this is the first time in 2020 where I've seen, like, elite Bjergsen in an LCS. So, props.
Was it this split when he was playing Fiddlesticks and stuff?
Yes.
It was
the beginning of summer.
Yeah, I feel like the whole couple of weeks where they were doing that,
that was a cry for help, wasn't it? You know, that was like nothing else. Exactly.
If there's any argument against Bjergsen MVP, it would definitely be those weeks.
He did win the first game he played, as I recall. But yes,
that was the one against Immortals, I think.
Yeah, it was also that Broken Blade was really bad for the first couple of games, straight up throwing at times, but definitely seems to have seen his footing, or found his footing right now. I thought his Aurelia game was really good against Cloud9. I think
he's always been like super insane at the mechanical champions, so I feel like TSM is kind of finding their comfort back in that again. Like for when he was in finals in spring of 2019, he was playing all the mechanical champions like Aurelia and stuff, and I feel like when I watched the C9 game, it looked like he was playing the same way he did back then.
Yeah, it's
funny as well, like that they're so good at the moment, because I actually don't think, obviously another narrative was they brought in Spicker as the jungler. I don't even think like he's played that much better. Like there's still clearly some issues with him in their team. I mean, this is why LCS looks a bit bad at the moment, mate. There's 2 teams at the moment. It's basically your team, Damonte, and Cloud9, who have monster junglers and they win off them. Everyone else, it just like has a gentleman's agreement that junglers don't exist. Like Team Liquid's the #1 team. They still don't, like, dude, no one thinks they have the best jungler. Vaguely, I don't know how many teams are doing it. It makes the league look really weird.
I would argue that if we were to say that right now the top 2 teams are TSM and Team Liquid, you can make a compelling argument that they have the worst 2 junglers in the entirety of LCS.
Definitely bottom of the pack for sure. Yeah,
I think you absolutely.
Even a diss. Yeah,
I think
the rest of the players are playing so well.
Like you could absolutely say, like, who else is in contention for that title? Like Wiggly, maybe. Right, but certainly I think there's a compelling argument that Spica and Broxa are 9 and 10. They're at least below 7. Let's put it that way. They're at least both below 7.
True.
Yeah, maybe. I
can't tell what the academy players promoted. Yeah, fair enough.
I feel like you guys are underrating their junglers maybe a little bit, but yeah, like they're definitely not the shining parts of their teams or anything.
Okay, are we underrating the junglers? Let's play this game, Damonte. Let's play Rank the Junglers in NA, all right?
Oh, gosh. I would have to look it up.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Like, where would you put
because if you're saying that that's underrating them, then we actually legitimately do have to have a conversation. Because here's the thing. Blabber, okay, you know, not having the MVP split, but still pretty good. Contracts has been quite good, I think, 100 Thieves since he's joined the team. Had some carry games. Dardoch's not blowing my mind, neither is Svenskeren, but I'd still rate them both above that. Xmithy, since he's returned, has been, I would say, one of the strong parts of Immortals in their wins. So Closer, obviously, could be the best jungler right now. So who are we left with? Santorin, also having a fine 2020, I would say, overall. So really the conversation, I think, is Spica, Broxa, and Wiggly as to who and in what order are the bottom 3.
Okay. I think I would agree with you on the Spica part. I feel like Spica has done some crazy things that I watched and I'm just like, okay, that's a little weird. But for Broxa, I feel like he's like playing his role like decently well in the team, because I feel like he used to be really used to ganking a lot and just pressuring a lot, and now he's like, he got put into this Team Liquid team where they always just kind of want to go slow and like out macro the enemy team, and I feel like he's trying his best to like fit in that, but I definitely doesn't. I guess that's not really an excuse for him.
No, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you that it's a misuse of Broxa, right? he was brought in to not play like this, and now he's basically just Xmithy version 2. He's Danish Xmithy, right? But
it also makes me think as well, by the way, because if you think about it, in the past, the logic in the past as to why Team Liquid was like the slower team who played towards scaling in late game is because their best player was the AD carry, and the rest of the team was like their top laners are fucking weak side top laners. So the logic is like that, and Xmithy was the jungler. Only one of those facts is even the same, which is that Impact still plays top lane. That's it. So at the moment now, when I look at Team Liquid, this reminds me of in OG, where like in OG, the reason why they always played the similar style in that team is because players like Nuke, Duck, and Cersei, like that's just what they've done their entire careers almost. So in this team, I feel like at the moment, if I have to look who the good players are and who seem like they're dictating the style, CoreJJ and Jensen must be the ones who like this style of play. Like, it just makes sense. Like, if you look at, like, Jensen's never been mad aggro since he's been in Team Liquid. CoreJJ's looked way better since Doublelift left. Like, I think this is just the style of play they're going to play, which is interesting because they're number one in the league, but they're not the team accelerating the game. You would think, as we were saying with that earlier discussion, Damonte, it should be a team like Cloud9 that smashes early game as number one in the league, right?
I think CoreJJ is, like, I feel like this guy should get MVP. I don't know. When I play against him, I just feel like the enemy mid laner has like 2 mid laners or something. He just always wins bot or like goes even, and he always is not showing in his lane ever. I feel like it's something that CoreJJ does better than everyone else. He just doesn't ever show his character on the map, and you just always feel like he's gonna be somewhere. Especially because he plays Bard so much, and Bard can just like surf the map so much. I feel like he just knows how to play with like inside vision so well.
He also, if he's controlling bot lane and he's letting the enemy have Herald on Bard, he can just neutralize Herald by ulting turrets. You know what I mean? So you can give it up with very, very little at all. Like, okay, take the Herald. We're just gonna.
That's the most broken part about Bard.
It is.
I hate it.
Bullshit. It is.
Yeah.
Like, they need to change that because as it stands right now, you shouldn't be able to hard push out your lane and then take Dragon or roam to mid, let the enemy team have Herald, and then have an instant Herald counter with Bartle. That is that is BS.
An entire objective. It's pretty annoying for sure. It feels good to have on your team because you're like, yeah, guys, you don't have to go topside at all. Just keep chilling in bot lane and then just Herald the or just Bartle the Herald.
The other thing about CoreJJ, and I think this is a really interesting point, is I think the best Team Liquid thought experiment right now is to think about if they had cut Doublelift and then kept Xmithy. So done the kind of ended up where they are right now, because
if they'd be slightly better.
Yeah. How could they have known that this carry jungle or farming jungler style was going to come in later in this year?
Of course, exactly,
obviously couldn't have known that. But in a theoretical universe where they still have Xmithy, because as you're saying with CoreJJ, part of it, never mind whether Doublelift was motivated or not in the spring split, et cetera, one thing that Doublelift always wants is to have his lane kingdom where he absolutely dominates the bot lane, and that requires the 2v2. The thing about Core now is that Tactical can just farm, and he'll just leave Tactical alone and just be like, we're not going to win this lane, goodbye. I'm going to go help out with the rest of the map. And I think in a way, that is the best kind of playstyle that CoreJJ can offer. It's extremely effective in the current meta. And that AD carry is going to hit that 2 items reasonably well regardless. And Tactical could just play passively and then carry in the late game team fights while CoreJJ just wanders off and gets his team ahead. And he's been so good at that it makes me feel like the CoreJJ bot lane Doublelift or CoreJJ Doublelift bot lane was a mismatch. And they won all those championships together, so it's hard to criticize it too much. But I feel like we're seeing the better version of CoreJJ now, where he's able to play more of his own style as opposed to adhering to Doublelifts.
You know, when Damonte earlier said that we were like underrating the junglers and flaming them a bit too much, here's the real flame. Just prepare for this, right? So here's the actual statement. How fucking lucky is Broxer? This guy can't play jungle and went and found 2 supports who were so good at support, they play jungle for him. How fucking lucky is this guy? What's he going to do next? Just walk into another team and fucking like prime Madlife appear out of nowhere like Terminator style, like, are you ready to play jungle now, Broxer? Like, give me a break. This guy's so lucky. Tell you what, as much as he might be unlucky that everyone talks shit on him when he wins the championship and goes to the finals and worlds, like, that's the down. But the positive is, look at all the amazing teams he gets to play with. Like, he's a very good teammate. minutes.
It's true. I feel like Prime Mata from 2014 is about to just come up and wander all over the jungle and start killing people for him. It does seem that it is an eerie coincidence, the kind of teams he's ended up on. But as a result of this, Core JJ now in the conversation for MVP, when I don't think he was ever seriously at any other point in time in the conversation. And I think that the shift to tactical has really enabled Core and the rest of Team Liquid to have a more distinct and more effective play style. And I just wish Smithy was still on the team. I think they would be really
Here's the
good.
question. Here's the question, though, right? Basically, once Team Liquid got this roll going where they were like second in the league and then they were tied with Cloud9, every talk show had this narrative and it went like this. I don't even think Team Liquid is the second best team. Right? The problem with that is they are now literally ranked, undisputed #1 team. But here's the issue. I still don't even feel like they're the best or maybe even the second. I'm not even sure if they're the second best still. So how do we resolve this? What do you think? Damonte, is Team Liquid the best team in LCS?
I think so. I think Team Liquid are the best team. I think when you play against these guys right now, it feels like how it felt playing against them when they were on their 4-peat, when they were winning just title after title. It just feels like they're gonna take the early game really, really slow. They're probably not gonna do too much, but you're gonna get a point into the mid game where it feels like you can't take anything from them, and they're just gonna slowly wait for their items, and then once they get their items, they just like pull the trigger, and their macro is really, really.
They know how to wait for power spikes, basically.
Yeah, they just know how to not give up anything and not make mistakes. They don't really lose minion waves ever. They always have someone collecting minion waves. They're always farming their jungle. It just feels like they're really consistent with how they get gold and how they don't let the enemies have anything. And then once they actually are like, once they know they're strong, they just play the game really well. I feel like it feels similar to how it did in 2019 when I was on Clutch when I played versus them.
As a side note, Core JJ did get an MVP in spring of 2019. I looked it up. So
he did, yes.
Yeah.
But I personally thought he should have been MVP almost every one of those, but whatever.
Fair enough. I mean, I think it's a really interesting point in time because there's going to be a big patch. I don't believe the new patch notes have been released yet. Only the sort of brief update on who's getting buffed and who's getting nerfed. For the summer playoffs. But I'm really intrigued to see which direction the meta game is going to go, whether it is going to ultimately favor Team Liquid's more measured and slow way of playing. And it does seem that the game in general has been drifting in that direction, with the emphasis as teams figure out that when exactly their power spikes are, how they can fight around the dragon, how many early objectives they can give up and still be effective in the late game and still win in the long run. Because that's been the easy way to play when you have this stacking objective, is to play early game, out skirmish, and then put the pressure on the soul point, right? You get that, you're starting to pressure soul point by 21, 22 minutes into the game. And that's the simple way of approaching the new meta that we have with the Dragon Soul. But as the game evolves, teams are going to figure out different styles of compositions that are going to spike at that point in time, where you can just sort of take over the game. And as long as you're confident that you can fight and win and take the next dragon before the soul comes online, that's the only thing that matters, because the stat boosts from the first 3 dragons are relatively negligible. So in a world where it's kind of all or nothing based around the dragon soul, I think it was just teams adapting over the long run to figuring out those power spikes, figuring out how to fight at that one objective, because if you can optimize from that point forward, you can just give that up and then you can win the game regardless, right? So I think that's what Team Liquid is very effectively doing right now. Now, I will say, if they buff some of these assassins, which it looks like they're going to, if these buffs are significant, then we might see more split push opportunities coming back where you could theoretically give up a Dragon Soul. Because again, the Dragon Soul only does things if you're, for the most part, fighting as part of a team fight, right? If you have a super powerful split pusher and that person is in a 1v1 against somebody with a soul, it may not make that much of a difference, right?
Yeah, the only dragon that really would matter there is like Ocean Dragon, just because you get the healing whenever you fight. But I would say like a lot of teams right now are watching LCK a lot. I feel like LCK are kind of figuring out the meta a bit faster than everyone else. And what you're seeing over there right now is that a lot of the teams don't care about the first couple dragons at all, and they will value diving like top lane or just taking enemy jungle over that, just because you get more gold just from just like taking jungle camps or killing the enemy top laner than doing the dragon. And then they're also picking more scaling at the same time, and you're not seeing Dragon Soul until like 30-35 minutes into the game. And I feel like that's kind of like that's also could be a reason why C9 is not even doing great too, because I feel like that's how Team Liquid is also approaching the game now, where they're not caring nearly as much about Dragon Souls or the first dragons in general, and they're just more focused on getting gold elsewhere on the map first.
I mean, doesn't that tie into what you're saying though? Because if like the dragon obviously is mainly for use in the fight, where you're not going to team fight for the first like 10 minutes anyway, are you? So it's like at that point in time, as long as you don't give up the whole soul, you can come back later. If you have the gold advantage, that's all that really matters, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's like the whole. That's basically the entire. Like some of the LCK team's style is based off that at the moment.
I think that's really dangerous, though, because you get into gentleman's agreement territory where neither team is going to try and skirmish or fight early game. And so the dangerous thing about that is the end result can be if one of those teams starts to hit somebody who's really strong in the early game, well, then all of a sudden being on soul point at 21 minutes into the game and having played so many opponents where you're just gentlemen's agreeing not to try and take those dragons early or not to prioritize them could be theoretically very dangerous for those teams in the long run.
Yeah, for sure. I think the whole strategy is not to just give up 3 dragons in a row. It's like just the first or maybe the second one at the max. And let's say you dive the enemy top laner while the enemy jungler is taking the first dragon, right? That top laner loses a lot more than the other team will gain just from getting 1 dragon, because basically you're gonna lose tower plates, you're gonna also lose minion waves, you're gonna be down XP versus enemy top laner, and then the idea is that top laner should be able to now give back to his team and help the next dragon. And since you're just gonna be stronger in that one role, hopefully that will extend that will like give you the winning piece for the next team fight, because they didn't actually make any individual stronger by getting the dragon.
Do you think that is something that's changed as the strategy has developed, is that top laners are becoming more important again because they can get significant advantages through these dives or through turret plates? Because we have seen, I would say, as summer has gone on, increasingly large numbers of top lane carry performances right now.
Yeah, I think top lane is pretty impactful right now for sure. I think especially with the champions that are getting played, it's a lot of like team fight carry champions. You see cannons popping off around the world right now, and even what else? I mean, like we were saying earlier, the Malphite stuff. Like as troll as it might seem, it's really impactful in the late game, and like late game as in 24 minutes when the dragon is there. But yeah, like it just seems like top lane is actually super vital right now.
Do you think LCK is in a better spot than China at the moment? Because results in China have been really volatile with top esports falling off, it seems, at the moment. And then also we've seen some like crazy dominant performances by Damwon in Korea. Do you think the momentum is kind of shifting over to LCK right before Worlds?
Like you said, with the new patch, I'm really interested to see how it's going to impact everything. But I feel like LCK has definitely started understanding the dragons better than everyone else right now. I feel like when I watch LPL, I feel like there's so many skill checks going around everywhere where like one team will fight a fight they just literally don't have to fight at all, and you don't really see that in LCK, where they're just focused on just making themselves strong for like they will just wait for a better opportunity, whereas LPL will just take anything in front of them.
Here's the metaphor for you, Damonte. LPL is like if the LCS teams actually did play in LCS like they do in scrims. That's like That's basically what I hear from all the stories of scrims in LCS. It's like it's people just going ham all the time like that. They just do that in stage games there though. Like fair play, they have the balls to go for it. Doesn't look good though.
Yeah, I don't know. Some of the LCS scrims are definitely troll. Just some teams are. Especially the bottom teams, they just check out near the end of the season. It's just like, why are we even scrimming, guys? I'd rather play solo queue.
That's how you know everyone who's a pro player in League of Legends is like a 19-year-old kid who's never had a real job. Put it this way, you just go for a summer and pump gas somewhere in like 35 degrees. I've already used Celsius, so I've ruined it for all Americans there. I don't know what that is, Monty. 7,000 degrees Fahrenheit, whatever. Go there in Arizona, in the middle of nowhere, pump a gas for that. And then like, I'll tell you, would you like to sit and get paid $300,000 a year to lose some best of ones to a good team in a video game? You'll go like, I'll take that deal immediately. But apparently, that's fucking hard. Oh, the strain. Oh, not another scrim. Is the $100,000 there yet? Like, good, it's there, right? Yeah, scrim's on. I don't even understand it, mate. I don't even understand it.
I think it's interesting to think about the teams in China now coming into the World Championship, because one thing about the top lane meta, as you're saying, becoming more dominant, has been IG has been tearing it up, and the Shy has looked a lot better. And this is a meta
The whole team looks way better.
Yeah, if it persists for Worlds, I think IG is certainly going to be a contender based on the strength of Rookie and the Shy again.
Yes. And Ning's
So
back.
funny. So funny. I feel like IG just started trying again or something, and now they just look like insane as they always do.
The most insane thing is that they actually got better by bringing Baolan back to the team. So everyone who talked shit, like I did for years, I thought he was a fucking bomb, one of the worst players to win Worlds. But the problem is their other support, that like Southwind guy was garbage. Like they actually have improved the team loads to bringing Baolan. It's much I'm reticent to say as much.
Who do you? I'd say that's an interesting conversation. Who do you think is the worst player to ever win Worlds? Not counting Fnatic, because they didn't win Worlds. We know that Fnatic was never a World Championship.
If we have to be like real, like we're not just going to meme and say it's Wolf or something, it's probably like someone from Taipei Assassins or something, I assume. Or someone from Samsung, maybe.
I would say Samsung.
We're talking about Season 7 one here, like I put it this way, at the time that they won, I mean, let's face it, Crown was pretty bad at that time. That was when he was like a Malzahar main. Who else even is
I mean,
I mean,
his
again,
champion pick was easy, but he definitely was not bad during that tournament.
we're talking about the worst to win Worlds, bro. Not you are bad in every sense, just worst to win Worlds. So put him forwards.
Looper?
Again, if it's going to be Taipei Assassins, I'd go with maybe
Looper.
like who would I say? Problem is, who was actually bad on Taipei Assassins? That's the problem.
I know, I'm kind of leaning towards Looper right now.
Looper was pretty bad alpha. Or at least he was overrated.
Looper fits in the same category as you did. You put Broxa in with having a support who just does everything.
He didn't have to do anything exactly. Yeah. The problem with Looper is he wasn't a bad player. It's just that like the joke is he just got like the ultimate fan experience of just getting to watch inside the game as everyone won the game. Like my joke would be like, he was just watching, going, "Fucking hell, that's amazing! Oh, I'm in the game. Shit, I'm gonna move in." It's like.
The hard thing for me with Looper is that I enjoyed him TPing in that level 1 on TSM on Singed and just ruining their tournament so much that it makes me feel bad to say his name, because he provided a moment of absolute joy for me. So
I miss Looper. I got to play with Looper when I first joined like the NALCS like scene. I was on the Echo Fox Academy and he was on the Echo Fox main team. Played a couple of scrims with him. That guy was really funny.
Holy shit, I forgot he was in NA. That's so
Yeah.
insane. I forgot that happened.
No, that was, by the way, that was probably the most egregious NA import signing ever. That was like, bring me someone who won Worlds for Samsung White. Like, we got your Looper, sir. Anyone else but that? Like,
he used to sit at his PC every day and like play FIFA Manager and Cartwriter all the time.
That is the peak
by the way,
right there.
As far as I know, not just because he played for Echo Fox, but as far as I know, he was like a massive signing as well. Like, I think he got fucking paid. Like,
he
remember
did.
that guy went
I totally forgot it happened.
This guy's the ultimate parlay. Why was I even talking shit on Broxer? This guy got to win Worlds, then went to China and just collected checks for years, doing nothing. Then went to LCS, just kept collecting checks. You know what, Broxer? Fair play. You've barely even begun check stealing, mate. This motherfucker, he's unbelievable. He's like,
this is like the ultimate example of that meme where Echo Fox is like, "Can we have a world champion?" And they're like, "Well, we have a world champion at home," and it's just Looper's face.
Put it this way: if you wanted to min-max the amount of effort and the amount of like how hard it is, but how much money you get to win in your career, he's got the best career ever in League of Legends. That's an amazing. I'll sign up for that career. Just put me back in 2014. I'll just come along. All right, then just give me everything he got. I could do it. There hasn't actually been anyone recently who's been that bad though. Like Baolan was one of them, but I'm trying to think. Well, actually, to be fair, I don't think on FPX you can even diss him. Like I didn't think LWX was good, but he did his job.
Yeah, I wouldn't put LWX in that conversation because he was a serviceable piece of that team, right? He wasn't.
Fine.
He wasn't super boosted or anything.
He got better. Yeah, he did all right.
Yeah, it's. I think where you have to have this conversation is in the reasonable level of replacements for that player. So if we were to look at Looper, right, and we were to say,
Oh, there's tons of top laners.
Yeah, were there other Korean
yeah.
top laners that would have been better on
Loads.
Samsung Light? The answer is almost anyone.
Yeah, dude, even Acorn from Samsung Blue was better than him. Like there was loads of players better than him. Come on, I'm not hating. Mate, if you're trying to play top lane from Korea, there's going to be people better than you. That's like the position that they fucking produce, isn't it?
So I do want your take before we go, Damonte, on EG, because you replaced Goldenglue. Goldenglue has been over there. You have unique insight into Huni as a player, as a teammate.
There, he liked the second. He liked the second. Start that again.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted your take on EG, since you replaced Goldenglue and you know Huni very well as a player, having been his teammate for a long time, and Huni has an extremely specific style of playing League of Legends that is very feast or famine and somewhat meta dependent. So what's your take on the changes that EG made after you showed Goldenglue the door, as it were?
I feel like now when I look at Evil Geniuses, they seem a lot more predictable than they were before with Jizuke. I feel like when I played Evil Geniuses in the first round robin, I was actually pretty worried because I didn't. Usually when you blind pick like a mid lane champion versus anyone else in the LCS, especially the mid laners, you kind of know what to expect. If you go against Power Evil, it's probably gonna be a mage. Same for like, honestly, like most of the mid laners in NA, they're just gonna play a mage Mercy or something. But when you pick versus Jizuke, it felt like I didn't really know what to expect. Maybe he was gonna have some crazy counter pick and I'd have a hard game. But now that when I see Huni and Goldenglue on the team, I feel like they instantly become pretty one-dimensional. I feel like Goldenglue.
They were one-dimensional before, to be fair. They were only... The thing about EG is they were one-dimensional with Jizuke. They just swapped. They went to the other dimension, right? They were one-dimensional in terms of length, and now they're one-dimensional in terms of width, right? They just changed the dimension that they were one-dimensional in.
Yeah, I guess it feels better for me because I don't have to play against Crazy Man Jizuke. I just have to play against Goldenglue. And now it's like Hanser has to deal with Huni. But I feel like their EG is pretty champion-dependent. I feel like Goldenglue's only looked amazing on Zoe for like a long time now, and for Huni, I feel like Rumble is not even that OP of a champion right now, and he only has looked insane on Gangplank. So maybe like teams are now experimenting with not giving those champions to them, and I feel like until they can prove they can win without those champions, the team seems really easy to play versus.
Yeah, I've got one thing to say on this, which is like, this is how much logic LCS makes, Monty. You can start the year, as both Huni and Goldenglue did, on worse teams, essentially get cut from those teams, and end up in a better team by the end of the summer split. How does that make any sense whatsoever? That's the most illogical transfer market I've ever heard of. First of all, who's giving away these players? And secondly, how the fuck are Goldenglue and Huni still getting into all these teams? Goldenglue must be like Weldon Green status, where he just has the best ever PowerPoint presentation that he gives in the meeting where you decided if you're going to sign him or not, and it's like Goldenglue Productions presents a new midline. Like, what is this shit? Like how did he get in all these teams? I'd sort of get the Huni one because, by the way, if people don't know, because of the residency thing, they probably are planning to do like a super team next year with Huni and Jizuki or something like that. Like that, there's a potential angle as to when you can't have both at the same time, to be fair. So it had to be a swap of both. But the Goldenglue one is wild because as much as everyone feels sorry for this guy, like, oh, it's such a shame, isn't it? Like, what are you on about? He gets in the teams every year, no matter what. Like, this guy's incredible. He's doing some like Houdini level shit where he just appears inside the team. Like, what the fuck? How did he get there? This is amazing, isn't it?
I think
Goldenglue dead. You have to understand, Goldenglue is a zombie mid laner. You have to actually stake the head. If you just chop his arm off, he's going to be back. You think he's dead? Oh, he'll probably bleed out. He'll never bleed out. He'll be back later.
I think Goldenglue just warms them up with that drive video to get this sympathy going.
Dude, if I was one of those players, exactly, if I was one of those players who had one of those drive episodes, I'd even do shit. Like, you know the joke where, like, when Yankos and Vander were in the same team as fucking Ryu, H2K, they used to leave that Ryu Faker 1v1 video just up every time, like, Ryu went to the toilet. So when he came back, he'd see that, like, he'd probably just do the same face again. Like,
that's so horrible.
Yeah, it is, but it's pure banter, by the way. So if I was Goldenglue, though, I'd be doing the same shit, though, with that drive episode. And I'd just have that waiting up there. So if someone goes, oh, what's this? Oh, this guy's a really cool guy. I'm rooting for him now. Oh, he's my teammate. Cool. Nice. Let's do it.
I think that's the meme metagame that we need to use going forward. You know, Rickrolling that died years ago. We now need to just Goldenglue roll people with the drive video over and over and over again. I think that is the new secret link that must be distributed at all possible times.
Obviously, at this point in time, Rioma's like sending out smoke signals like, when do I get my drive episode?
By the way, still,
the drive episode to add it to the resume.
Still no someday drive episode for some reason. A guy who has actually had an extremely successful career, LCK
and has a lot of drive.
Yeah, has a lot of drive.
Few Koreans who came to the LCS, already a champion by the way, and still plays like super dedicated and like he's driven to win. He literally fits the theme of the series.
Didn't complain when he was sent to NA Academy because of all the residency restrictions that existed. That guy's just been quietly chugging away and has just maintained, being at the top of the top lane for his entire career. Got sent to Academy for reasons that were not his fault or related to his own performance.
No, exactly.
And then he won Academy, by the way. Like, a lot of the LCS players who go to Academy, they just give up and then don't do anything. But this guy goes and wins Academy. What a beast.
Yeah, respect.
Yeah, compared to the Huni performance I was seeing
Yeah.
in Academy, it gave me an entirely new respect for something.
Huni in Academy was crazy. I've never seen something like that, man. That was
what I'm
relentless.
talking about when he's like straight up inting.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You
yeah.
saw
It
those
was-
games. Like, shit's absolutely insane that he would actually play that badly.
And then after playing that badly, instantly goes to an LCS team. Like, it's just so funny. Like we said, though, it makes sense, though. I mean, Huni is still insanely good, but he just was not trying for sure.
All right. Well, you have any parting thoughts here, Damonte? Any topics you want to discuss? Anything pressing in the LCS that needs to be talked about that hasn't been brought up on the broadcast or any other shows?
I think this year has actually shown that a lot of Academy players and a lot of the NA talent players should actually have more opportunity in the LCS. I think
Who are you thinking of when you say that? Who's coming to mind?
I think like Tactical has really proven himself. This guy's like super new, like really, really new. I mean, Insanity is another one. I think this guy, he comes in LCS. There's definitely holes in his play, but it's like showing that these Academy players are not this much worse than the LCS players. And then I also felt that after I played the Academy split in spring, that some of the mid laners in general, they just play, they play the game, I feel like almost more correctly in a way than the LCS players do. I think the LCS players are a lot smarter than the Academy players, but some of the LCS players, they just play in a way that makes their team worse around them, especially some of the mid laners, I would say. So I think after this year is over, if you're a general manager, head coach, I think you should really reflect on like what you saw in the Academy system this year and maybe just giving more chances to these players. I feel like that's actually something that should be happening after this year.
Well, Trees
not at all self-serving there, by the way. He was actually in Academy this year.
To be fair, he didn't think he was going to be in Academy. No, I agree.
That's true.
Trees hasn't even died in the last 4 games, and granted, he spent this last week playing exclusively Morgana.
Problem is, he plays with TSM, so he will die eternally in hell. So there you go.
He's committed the unforgivable sin. He will pay for his crimes in the next life, as it were.
Exactly.
But I do agree with you, and one thing that I think is so interesting about Insanity as a player is that he sort of has a lot of the reverse problem that you see from rookies, which is that many rookies have stronger laning phases from solo queue and then don't know what to do in terms of team fights or how to play around the professional game. He has this weird problem where he's butt cheeks in lane, but he actually is pretty good in team fights. And I feel like from when we had Alorum on the show a couple weeks ago, I asked like, do they send you to boot camps as part of Academy? Because it seems to me if I was running an LCS team and my Academy team doesn't have to go to Worlds or anything like that, they could theoretically spend 5 months out of the year in Korea or Europe just playing solo queue, right? You would think that that would be a way to accelerate their growth as Academy players when the length of their season is so much shorter. He's like, no way, they don't do that. So for me, I think Insanity piecing out to Korea and fixing up his laning phase in Korean solo queue in the offseason would solve many of this guy's problems, and he could be a rising star mid laner by next year.
Yeah, the Academy teams, just the Academy players, they get almost zero resources from the orgs usually. They just don't. Usually they just are there because they have to be there, I feel. It's like how a majority of the teams on the Academy are. like Riot is just forcing Academy to be a thing, and then like the LCS teams don't want to spend money on them, which is kind of unfortunate.
Yeah. And you know what? You have the added benefit that Korea is probably the best place in the world to be during this pandemic as it stands right now. So just go serve your 2 weeks in quarantine jail when you go to Korea, and then you can actually go do things. I mean, I wish I was in Korea right now instead of, I mean, I always wish I was in Korea instead of Los Angeles. That's just straight up true. But especially now, I would say, especially now.
Agreed.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Damonte. Appreciate your time and insights. Good luck on the rest of the season with Golden Guardians. We're going to take a brief break while we transition guests, and we'll be back with Youngbuck from Excel.
Cool. Thanks for having me.